Well, good morning, everybody. It is going to be story time today, but I thought before I did that, I'd just kind of give an honest view of what the van looks like today. There would be my shoe bin and a little extra storage box. So to get all the light, I just went ahead and put the jackets in the curtain behind the passenger chair. Now I've got all of that open. As you can hear, it's kind of a rainy day out there. It's kind of a windy day out there too. And I have my table completely cleared off. As you can see, there's a couple of cranes on there because that is what we'll be working on today. Go back over a moment. There is the guitar. For the moment, that's about where it's sitting when I am stationary. Other than that, it ends up on the bed. And there you have basically the side-to-side view of everything going on in the van. Oh yes, that's also a new little addition. I just got a little USB powered fan, so I can keep it a little more regulated in here, and have the jackery and the lights. But yeah, that's what it looks like on the back of the van today. I'll be back in just a moment to do the project. Well, hello again. I am back, and as you'll be able to tell beside me, the wind is definitely blowing the trees around. It's actually kind of fun to be sitting in here doing this. Actually, I don't need these on while I'm doing this. But yeah, it is going to be story time, and in between that and during that, I'll be doing some origami as well, because I want to make something for the van that I can put up by the end of the day as a nice little decor for the van and kind of show everybody what it is I like to do. But that we just kind of go along and show you as I'm talking. So when I was 20 years old, I ended up in North Carolina. Now, how I ended up there, I'm not going to go into. Hold on here. Men don't have hair bands, but men do have sunglasses. There we go. That's a little better. When I was 20 years old, I ended up in the middle of North Carolina. Honestly, I can't really go into how I got there. More because to fully understand how at age 20 I ended up in North Carolina would really take backing all the way up to about when I was 10 and moving forward from there. And I don't want to do that today. So, we're going to start with 20, North Carolina. Wanting to get out really bad. And at that point, I am from Portland, Oregon, originally. By that time in my life, I had been outside of Portland to the degree of seeing Phoenix, Arizona once for about 3 weeks, having gone to the Oregon coast multiple times throughout my teenage years, having made it up to Seattle a few times as both a kid and as a teenager with my own car. But that was probably really about it. I can tell you North Carolina didn't thrill me at the time, but I also had reasons to leave North Carolina. And not because of North Carolina, just things in my life. Anyway, I decided, since my eventual destination was indeed to head back to Portland and take care of something I felt I needed to get done. Sorry, folding. So I went to the Greyhound because I decided I wanted a little bit of time to shake my head out, clear some things out before I got back here to deal with what I was going to deal with. Now, I had not been paying attention to Greyhound whatsoever because, again, I was 20. There are things you're just not quite as aware of that at that point, especially when you're just in a strange land, first time wanting to just get out more than anything else. The night before I left, I was in a hotel and I had called both the train station and the bus station to see what the tickets would be, and the difference was astronomical enough that I was like, heck with it, I'll go with Greyhound. Taking the sights as I make my way back. And when I got to the Greyhound, the lady asked me, and I will not deny it to this day, the lady straight up asked me, she's like, you know what's going on, right? Oh, that bravado of youth. I was like, of course, yeah, I know what's going on. Not a problem. I need to get going. I need to get back to the West Coast. So we decided through booking it that in all sincerity, it would be the least expensive for me to book it into LA but not beyond, because then once I got to LA I could actually do a commuter, which would be cheaper, right up to Portland, because you have the LA to Seattle commuter. So I got my ticket to LA. I got on the bus and sat down in the aisle seat, put my rucksack in the passenger seat, put a hat over my face to make sure that it seemed like I was asleep, because I really didn't want anybody that generally rides Greyhound sitting next to me. Or at least have the ability to choose if somebody was going to sit next to me. I ended up having the seat to myself, and got to that point of where it was time to pull out, and everything got going. The driver gets on over the overhead speaker. Hey everybody, welcome to Greyhound. Thank you for traveling with us today. Just want to remind everybody that only the back 5 rows are the smoking seats of the bus. I was from Portland. You could not smoke on a bus ever. The whole time. Anywhere I had taken a Greyhound, there was no smoking on the bus. Now I was in the 5th row. And I did smoke. I still do. So it was this really crazy, novel experience to be able to take out a cigarette and light it on a bus. So yeah, that, and considering what was coming, that was going to be a very good thing. So I'm enjoying this whole ability to smoke on the bus and kind of looking at the odds and ends and freaks and geeks, and ooh, a couple of little hot girls here and there that seem to potentially be riding by themselves. Might actually have somebody to talk to before this whole ride's over. Driver gets back on the overhead. And this is the follow-up to what the lady asked me. Did I know what was going on? So he got back on the overhead. All right, folks, it's official. As of midnight tonight, every Greyhound bus driver will be going on strike. So, oh yeah, we're down to that so far. So he took it as far as he could, which was still in North Carolina. Durham, North Carolina. Now, I have not been to Durham, North Carolina since I was 20, so do not take anything I say today as what I think the city is now. But back then, Durham was still definitely a smaller town to some degree, because their bus depot also doubled as like a parcel shipping, sorting station as well on the back side of it. And they only had, and I mean, Portland's wasn't huge either, so it's not like I'm like, and Portland's was bigger, but it only had like 4 or 5 rows of those old orange, like almost school chairs that are plastic and bolted together and to make a row of chairs. So they had like 4 or 5 of those. So like, I'd say 30, maybe 40 chairs all told. They had 3 vending machines. One was the kind that dispensed cup soda instead of canned soda. All of that soda was flat and hot. There was another candy dispenser that truly had candy bars that had been in the sun so long, many of them had melted over in the little ring that held them. And then the third dispenser had milk. And after the seeing what the first 2 did, I was not going to touch a milk dispenser. And so our bus load showed up first. And within the next half hour, 2 more bus loads, full. I don't know, what do you think? About 55, 60 in a bus? Roundabout there. Like I said, 40 seats max for people to sit on. So we had people on fighting after a while because, through the night as it got harder and harder for even just a place to sit down. We had people like literally just fighting over inches on the floor for a spot. And it took about a day and a half, like a full day and a half for the first bus to get there. And by then, people were just getting pissed. And fortunately, realistically, Durham was not an area that had like a whole bunch of hotels or anything else. It felt to me, and again, I was only there for a few minutes and in a very weird spot. But at that time, it felt to me like Durham was going about through the same kind of situation Portland really was, which it was an established town, but a lot of it kind of wasn't really functioning the way it should. It felt like a couple of the warehouse factory type things that were really close to the Greyhound station were just desolate and desolated and hadn't been used in years. And so it kind of really felt like a town that was going through a slump. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But again, I didn't see much more than 3 blocks of it either. So, and I was definitely in a weird spot. There was one little cafe close to the bus depot itself, and that thing got flooded by all 3 of the bus loads. And you could tell they were just like, whoa, we weren't expecting 200 people almost, it feels like, suddenly just blast into our restaurant. I personally let everybody go. Go ahead. I can hang out for another hour before I'm totally dying. I got crackers in my fucking backpack. Go ahead. And I got to wait until it was actually a little more dead, and I got in there and was able to get my food within about a half hour. Hearing the waitresses just go, oh my God, again, this is crazy, in between themselves. And I went there a couple of times and had meals over that day and a half that we waited. And every asshole that demanded to be on that first bus when it showed up, I let them go right ahead. You get up on that bus, go right ahead. See ya. So by the time the third bus rolled in, I think we were down to like 30 people on that bus. So it wasn't horrible. But these were scab drivers at this point. And usually I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't ride with a scab driver, especially during a strike that I was coming to find out was quite vocal and big going on across the country. But I was in North Carolina. And I wanted to get home. So I got on the bus, and the next major stop we did was New Orleans. And when we got to New Orleans, that is where I started to realize that this whole strike was a big deal. Because in New Orleans, we had people bam, 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 on the buses we went by, holding up signs, yelling, screaming, cussing at us and the drivers for the bus to even go through to the Greyhound parking lot. So it's time to get off the bus again for a little bit. And I got off the bus. I stowed my stuff in one of the rental lockers that they have at Greyhounds. Obviously, New Orleans, bigger city, their Greyhound terminal was more similar to the Portland terminal that I had grown up with for the bus. Big kind of setup for an area with a little retail store, a little restaurant that you don't want to eat at, little arcade, little storage area, and then you're out. Now, the only thing I really knew about Nolans at that point was its above ground mausoleums, because I was indeed into the little goth girls in my teenage years, so I learned all about all the cool little dead things that they worshipped, and and I think crypts are cool too. Actually, I had always enjoyed graveyards myself, and so I found the New Orleans graveyards very interesting and intriguing, and just so different and macabre and very cool. So I knew that about New Orleans. I did not know about Mardi Gras, and I swear to God these are truths, because you are going to hear some weird, interesting moments in my life of like, really? That really happened? Yes, it really happened. And to humanify myself more, I will tell you right now that I was never at a cool concert as a kid. I didn't go to my first rock concert until I was like 21, almost 22. And that was when a buddy of mine would drag me along, but we're jumping a little ahead. But yeah, I was not a cool kid. I don't have all these stories. I wasn't at Woodstock in me mommy's womb. None of that kind of stuff. But as this is one of those spots of where I think I've come to understand that there is something, I don't know what, but there is something that on occasion creates little moments in your life. And whether you take those moments or not is kind of up to you. We can get into that deeper some other time. Anyway, went out on the streets of New Orleans, knowing nothing about Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras was going on. I was only 20 years old, but I had already gotten into my first bar when I was 18. And I quickly realized that this was a huge party, and I found Bourbon Street. And it was not too long before I was in a bar, and it took me a day and a half to get out of that bar. 6 or 7 of those hours was hanging out with a couple, 3 cops who had just gotten married, and one of them ordered a pizza from another restaurant to be walked down and brought into this bar because none of them wanted to leave, and we were all just partying and doing those grenade drinks that they have, the very touristy thing. I mean, for 20 years old, I got schnockered. After a day and a half, I finally crawled back out of that bar, because there are bars that don't close in New Orleans. It's different there. No crap, messed up. Yeah, not that bad. Well, I may want to unfold that and refold that. That didn't look that good to me. Anyhow, I may not have been in that bar the whole time. I honestly don't know. It's one of those, I can honestly say that's one of those moments of where alcohol had a massive effect on me, and I really don't know where I was for that whole day and a half. I just remember starting at the bar and then pulling out of that bar a day and a half later and making my way to the Greyhound again, going, oh my God, I gotta get out of the city now. Because I could tell that New Orleans would have been one of those places that I maybe would have wanted to stay, and I definitely went back later. But it had been just a side trip stop on my way back to the coast, and I had kind of figured, actually. So yeah, I started in a bar, and I honestly don't really know what happened for the next day and a half. I mean, I honestly cannot, to this day, tell you where I was, what I did or didn't do. I know it was just drinking. There was no sex, but I mean just like where I was drinking, what I was drinking, how I ended up there, what I had to drink, who I was talking to or hanging out with. I really can't remember. I remember 3 cops and a girlfriend, wife, actually, that one of them had just gotten married, so that's why they were down in New Orleans to celebrate the honeymoon. And they had a pizza delivered from another restaurant to that bar because they just didn't feel like leaving and wanted the party to continue. And I got a couple of slices because I was there hanging out with them as well. And yeah, but that's like the one memory I really have. And those grenade drink things, which, you know, especially as a 20-year-old who's not really done a whole lot of drinking. I'm not going to say I didn't do any. I was quite well versed in alcohol, especially beer, by the time I went there. Like I said, we'll get into some of that another time. But so after a day and a half, I made it back to the Greyhound station. And things had calmed down again a bit because a little more time had again gone by. And the bus I got on was pretty calm. I think there was only like 20, 25 people on it. Wasn't any big fuss of us getting out that time. And, you know, just kind of continued to roll and troll along till we got to Phoenix. That was like the next big stop. You know, there were obviously quite a few in between, but for me, Phoenix was a big stop because I had been there before, and I was like, oh, so this is what it looks like coming in on a bus. Okay, yeah, still not an attractive city. Sorry. Yeah, I didn't like Phoenix, I'm not gonna lie. Too hot, nasty. I mean, I have heard there are parts of Arizona I should go check out, but it's not on my big list of quick things to go do. I can't lie. I've seen Phoenix and it was just Okay, to give you an idea, the people I was hanging out with, they had left their house for like about a week to go on a little vacation type thing out of the area. And this is back when cast iron candelabras on the wall was kind of big for some folk. And they had a few of those hanging all over the wall. During the week they were gone, these candles literally melted over sideways, and they left them because they were just like, dude, we didn't think that was going to happen. That's how hot it gets there. Stuff inside your house just melts over sideways. No, thank you. So yeah, but Phoenix was like the next big spot for me. This is going to be a long video, and I already know I've got one edit to do, so which already happened, but it's going to be a long video. It's a long story. So the next big stop was Texas. And in Texas, we ended up having three buses, Greyhound, converge on this one truck stop diner. Because they're all kind of lost. I had trouble with them. Like, west. Just west, man. We were so close. Just drive towards the sunset. What do you mean you're lost? But so we had this culmination of 3 buses inside this truck stop diner. And I had ordered a cheeseburger and fries. Cheeseburgers, fries were literally inedible, even though they had just come out of the backside. Kind of seemed like they had come out of the backside. As I was sitting by myself, I mean, like there were, because big, long, almost like the old high school lunch cafeteria setup is how this was, with those kind of folding tables and bench type things. But I was definitely sitting by myself in a decent little space and choked the burger down because I was starving, tried 1 or 2 of the fries, couldn't handle them, so I was about ready to throw them away anyhow. And I see these 2 guys walking every single table, asking questions, every single table. Now, I'm not going to lie. I was still naive back then. I had a little street smarts. And I had some life experience under me. but my naivete was about to fuck me. So it was this kid, skinny, greasy, black hair, cheap leather jacket, off-brand jeans. I mean, just being honest. Dirty t-shirt, and an old scraggly guy, scragglier than me. Not as much hair though. We're literally just trying to bum anything we could off of every table they were walking by. So I pushed my fries. I was like, I don't want these. And just as they were about to sit down and try and start talking to me, I stood up and walked outside. Like I said, little street smarts. And I wanted to go outside and have a cigarette. And so, of course, as soon as they realized I had cigarettes, here they came. And as soon as they asked me for a cigarette, I'll be honest, I was one of those folks from the early on of the onset of my life. Like, you don't have something for the cigarette. I'm not necessarily just going to give you one. My friends, sure, because we pass them back and forth. I don't know you. Why am I giving you this for free? I didn't get it for free. I'm paying for my death. Unless I want you to die, I'm probably not going to give you a cigarette. So they were like, can we get cigarettes, dude? Can we get them? I'm like, no. But I was like, sorry, I don't give anything away for free. Like, we got weed. We got weed, man. We got weed. Now, it had been a while since I had been able to smoke some weed. So that sounded appealing. Like, okay, let me see what you got. Younger kid, Freebird. Yeah, Freebird. Pulls out this film canister and opens it, and there is the driest, most granular crap. I mean, this looked worse than parsley. This is like truly that just, it's just dust. And again, I'm from Portland. And I'm sorry, y'all. I know we are just starting to figure out the whole legalization of marijuana and all that. But we've had it good here for a long time. So, I mean, I laughed at it. I openly laughed at it. He's like, well, we got pills. Got some pills, man. Hope you be able to relax. Pills. I was like, I don't do pills, man. He's like, well, what about alcohol? I was like, well, yeah, sure. You get some drinks, I'll get you some cigarettes for sure. He's like, all right, well, we all have to go to the store then. So while I went to the store and actually bought more cigarettes and a couple other things, they boosted a whole bunch of alcohol, using me as a distraction. And yeah, I'm going to have to undo this and redo it all the way because I'm just not happy with the way this one's ending before. And this is what I was wondering. I was like, am I going to be able to do the origami and talk at the same time? Almost. I almost had it. I really did. But I need to fully refold this again, unfortunately. So we're going to start over. But yeah, so they used my actual transaction to boost alcohol. Oops, yeah, fine, whatever. It wasn't me. I wasn't guilty. I didn't do it. But all three of us ended up going back to the buses, and we posted up in the bus furthest away from the diner so the drivers wouldn't see us until it was really time to go again. And so we cracked open some beers, cracked open a bottle, started to have some drinks. Now, if you know anything, you know that alcohol is far more the gateway drug than marijuana ever is, because I have made the dumbest decisions of my life while drinking. Period. Because while I was drinking, those pills suddenly started to sound like a good idea. Because, yeah, man, look, these guys are kind of cooler than I thought. Just go on, headache, I hang out with you, have a good old time now. Let's go do some pills. And hell, shit, at least even smoke that fucking shitty-ass marijuana you got. And it did turn into a little party. all sincerity, it reached the point of where we had at one point, we had about 7 other people hanging out with us who also had like a little bit of drugs, a little bit of tobacco, a little bit of alcohol stashed away. So we were all having our little party time in there for a few hours. Actually, it lasted a couple hours because those damn drivers were really lost. But anyway, the buses all get going again. Sadison's, since we're all having this good old hangout time, we'll just stay on the same bus. Why the heck not? The older guy, I never did catch his name. If I did, I forgot it quickly. He got off at a couple of stops. Like, we were at El Paso, and I do not think I know Texas that well, because I don't. But we were in El Paso, and he got off a couple, 3 stops after that. Dallas, maybe? I could be absolutely wrong. And I was a little intoxicated. But yeah, so he gets off, but Freebird's still there. Freebird's heading to San Francisco. I tell him that I am heading to L.A. He had already known this by that point. He's like, dude, why are you going to L.A.? L.A. sucks, man. San Francisco is where it's at. I was like, oh. Because I grew up with the joy and beauty and magic of Hollywood in my head, and I want to go see it. Like, dude, L.A. sucks, dude. You don't want to stay there. You want to come to San Francisco. L.A. sucks, dude. I was not listening for quite a while. I was not listening to him about that. I was like, nope, we are parting ways in L.A., dude. I'm out. You know, because so his story was that he had been traveling from New York when the strike started, and so he was totally broke because, I should say, it took almost 2 weeks to get from North Carolina to L.A. It took 11 days. Now, granted, some of those were things I got myself stuck in, like Nolans. But a lot of it was prolonged waiting in weird, strange little bus depots across the country, waiting for the next scab driver to be able to get there with a bus empty enough to take people. And so that did take a little while. So I was willing to accept that he was broke, like a joke. So there were a couple of times I bought him a cheeseburger, and again, let's remember back then, a cheeseburger and fries was like $2.50. And at the time, as I was traveling, like by the time we'd gotten to the Texas area, by the time I had gotten to Texas, I still had about $200 left, $250 in my pocket. Not a lot, but for a kid traveling, I can actually do a lot with that and get pretty far. So we get to LA. Now, those of you that have had the joy of taking the Greyhound to LA know that LA has indeed put their Greyhound terminal, Hollywood especially, because I was going to Hollywood. The Hollywood terminal for forever has been on the ass end of ugly in Hollywood. You would have seriously no idea that Hollywood and Vine is like 3-4 blocks away from just the death that you feel around the Hollywood bus terminal, bus depot. It's just this tiny little thing, just streets where like buildings are basically holding each other up from decay and misuse, is what you feel when you step out from the Hollywood bus terminal. And I was just like, wow, maybe Hollywood really does suck. Maybe LA really does suck. Do I really just want to be here? This sucks. I thought there were beaches and cute girls and things to see and opportunities for jobs. This looks like shit. So, at that point, Freebird was able to cash his ticket in to Amtrak for the remaining leg up to San Francisco. My trip was only to LA. The trip up to San Francisco took some dollars out of me. And I wasn't even sure I was going to go. I was like, well, maybe I'll just figure it out. Maybe I should at least take a day here and figure out LA. And when Freebird was like, oh, come on, dude. No. You've already helped me out so much. At least come up to San Francisco with me, and then I can pay you back, because he kept telling me how he's got these bonds, or not bonds, but he's got traveler's checks in San Francisco waiting for him that he had sent ahead with his girlfriend, which he did have a girlfriend. I'll say that. And that as soon as we got to San Francisco, he would be able to pay me back all the money I'd spent on him, plus a little extra, and then I could make my way up to Portland. He was like, dude, come on. So with as disappointed I was by LA, I went to San Francisco. We got there, and I won't deny I was kind of impressed by the fact that they had electric buses back then. We had a bus system here in Portland, but we didn't have buses that were set up like trolleys, or where all their power is just from overhead cable lines. I was like, that's kind of cool. Something I've not seen before. And Freebird's girlfriend had found them a place on Lower Haight Street with 2 vegans as their roommates. And I'm not bashing on vegans. I'm not a vegan. I'm not a vegetarian. I tried vegetarian once for a girlfriend, and within about 10 days she was cooking me meat because of just how I was getting. I don't do well without meat. But these vegans were kind of weird, because this is back in the day where I don't even know if a lot of vegans understood how to be vegan. Because a lot of the times I would just truly see them eating rice cakes. Like, that was all they ate. So I don't know if they're one of those ones that just called themselves vegans because they didn't know how the hell to eat and subsisted off of rice cakes. But they weren't healthy looking. And they're just like pale and it's like, wow, y'all look ugly as hell. And his stripper was even less attractive. His girlfriend, which I just let out as a stripper, was even less attractive. But once you really start to get to know a few strippers, that's unfortunately truer than you like to know. Anyhow, see, I told you this is going to be a long one. Anyhow, we're there for that first night, and his girlfriend is not as seemingly aware of me showing up as he had made it seem. Her new roommates were definitely not aware that I was showing up and was expecting to have a safe place to crash that night. So they weren't exactly happy. But I still had a place to crash that night. And, oh, yeah. Here we are. We're better. Now we're going to make a dragon. So the first night, sleep on the couch in the upstairs front room. Next day, I hang out with Freebird and a couple of people that his girlfriend knows come over. And they have hash from Amsterdam and this big old chunk that still has a stamp on it. Back then they used to, golden hash would actually get this little marking stamp on it. First time, only time I've ever seen that. But it was the first time I had a spliff, which, for those who don't know, is tobacco and marijuana in one applicable hash. Got super stoned that day and didn't do much. Other than wandered up to Haight Street and saw Haight Street itself and, Golden Gate Park and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, okay, it was cool. pretty cool street, definitely. Went to the Atomic Cafe and had coffee a couple of times over the next 2 days. And second morning I woke up there. I was like, "Hey, Freebird, when am I getting that money so I can continue my way on up to Portland?" He's like, "Oh yeah, dude. Let's do that. He's like, we'll get that taken care of real close, real fast, real soon, dude." Third day, still no money. I asked him again, "Hey, Freebird, the money I had is definitely starting to run low over these last couple of days. And, you said all told you were gonna give me about $120, and it's only like $30 from here to get to Portland. So, if you can do that, because I'm now down to $20 and I no longer have the ability to get back to Portland. So, if you can give me that $100 so I can get on my way, that'd be great." So that night, him, his girlfriend, and the two odd vegans all come up as one to the room they had been letting me, the main upstairs living room they had been letting me sleep on, and decided to let me know that the way Freebird had paid me back for my generosity was letting me sleep there for the last 3 nights. That equaled out all debts paid owed type thing. And the next morning I had to leave. Now there is no doubt I could have contacted family anywhere through here. And family was odd at that point, but it was still family, and I could have reached out to probably anybody, mom or dad, and had gotten some kind of help. But I didn't. Instead, the next day came, and by the end of the night, I was outside with nowhere to go. With at that point about $12 in my pocket. Now, strangely, there was this kid Moonchild that Freebird and his girlfriend knew from New York, where they were both from, who had been over to the house a couple times since I had first shown up, who lived outside, and had come to San Francisco because they were all coming to San Francisco, but had chosen to basically stay outside, although it seemed like he kind of had the impression he was going to have more use of their apartment than he ended up having as well. But that first night he found me down in Golden Gate Park, where I was about ready to more or less curl up underneath a bush and try and hide myself away and sleep with the blanket I had. They were like, "Dude, that's not safe." Oh, let me describe Moonchild. It's going to take a moment. Moonchild was about as tall as I am. I'm about 6'2". He had, from this side over, his hair was down to here, all of it, down to here. From this side over, bald. Totally bald. Shaves it every day. Wore a top hat. Big top hat. Would only speak of himself in the third person, so would call himself Moonchild the whole time. Moonchild's going to go do this. Moonchild's going to go do that. Moonchild wants to have this. And Freebird included. There were people up to me in his world that anytime he slipped out of saying Moonchild and said me, myself, I, anything like that, he had been goaded into and become accustomed to burning himself with a cigar so he wouldn't do it again. He was also collecting SSI. That comes up a little later. But that night, he showed me to an abandoned car that I could crash out in for the night. safely. Which I did. We both crashed in the car. Him in the front, me in the back. Dragon. There's part of it. See, actually worked this time. Haha. Next day was obviously we weren't going to be able to do an abandoned car for too often, because that was actually a buddy of his whose like car had just gotten broken into and screwed around with so much that he just wasn't doing anything with it, but he didn't want people crashing in it nonstop either. So I was basically following Moonchild around, because I had never really been out of Portland, let alone homeless in a city, ever. And San Francisco, to be absolutely honest, was a little scary. It was scary for those first couple of nights. So I was kind of following Moonchild around like the kind of lost kid I really was. Now, fortunately, this lost kid was a Boy Scout and a farm boy. And I knew I wasn't going to be too screwed for too long, because I was going to figure something out. But on that first day after crashing in the abandoned car, Moonchild introduced me to the Haight-Ashbury Project, which is a place where you can get a big free meal every day and even take some food with you. Introduced me to Food Not Bombs, which is a organization that would come down and do a vegetarian feeding at Golden Gate Park. And then also introduced me to the fact that there were these professional panhandlers that had licenses all up and down Haight Street. Licenses were pinned to their jacket or whatever they had on. And these people would collect money all day long, and it was because of this one woman, I don't remember her name, sorry, but she would then gather all the funds, and like the guys would get to keep so much as well, but it was known that a lot of this was going to the community, because she would collect a lot of this money back from these panhandlers and then go to the little grocery store just about across from the park back then and buy a bunch of like bread and peanut butter and honey and apples and things that could hold for a while and just be true food. So, in one day he showed me how to eat 3 different times and how to even be able to take some of that with you and have food later. By the middle of the day, he showed me the Polytech Gymnasium. Now it's gone, and all of the Polytech had been gone for quite some time. But at one time, there was this entire you can see the wind's just freaking ripping, dude. There was this whole Polytech up on the end of Golden Gate Park. Gymnasium was the only thing left, and houses had been built all around it. And the Polytech gym was just this big standalone brick structure that had a door that was just held closed by a padlock and a big chain. And I asked Moonchild, I was like, what's keeping you from getting in there? He said, well, Moonchild doesn't have a bolt cutter. Well, Freebird sure the hell did, and as of then, I felt he owed me. So we went back to that house, and Freebird was like, oh, no. I'm like, you have a bolt cutter. I want that bolt cutter now. So I got the bolt cutter. So that evening, once it had gotten a little darker, we went back to the Polytech gym. And thinker here grabbed the bolt cutters out of Moonchild's hand when he was about to go and try and cut the lock. I was like, don't do that. He's like, why not? Now yanked the chain out a little bit, held it and said, cut this link. So he cut the link. We were now able to get into the gym and then pull the chain back through the hole that held it and had it looking like the deadbolt was still in place, untampered. He was like, oh, that's smart. I'm going to have to remember that. course, he said Moonchild. So we explored the gymnasium, and let me tell you a little bit about it. This thing was old, definitely old. Had the rollaway wooden bleachers like just about every high school gym has. And it was a basketball court primarily. I mean, there you could obviously do a lot in it, but it had basketball court either end, and it was pretty big. Thing is, with the floor of the basketball court, pigeons had been living in crapping in there for years. Monstrous amounts of that floor had already fallen away into the underside just from the moisture and detritus of the pigeon guano sitting on it and festering for years and years and years. So you really had to walk along the very rim of the floor, because where we were aiming for was this little like almost announcer's box basically above the bleachers that had like this one window looking down on the devastated gymnasium, and then like a small room that had like some windows on the back side of it. And there were, I think there were 4 mattresses up there at the time. I know there were definitely 2 that we ended up using, and there was one that was so covered in old brown blood that I wasn't even going to go near it. God knows who had what happened there, but yeah, I didn't want to know at all. But so we started crashing there, and within a couple of days, I was actually volunteering at the Haight-Ashbury project. Because if you volunteered, you had somewhere to be for the day, because I got to show up there. I think they let me come in and hang out as soon as 8 o'clock in the morning and help start cooking. They did bread in little coffee tins, and so, you were like mixing dough and putting them in there, and you had plenty of people helping, like making salads, cooking pastas. And, the thing is if you're someone who stayed there and helped out, you got a way better meal, because you would also help feed everybody. But then once everybody was fed, I mean, for starters, you're just kind of noshing and nibbling as you're cooking like any other chef's kitchen. So you're not starving at all. And then you get everybody else fed, you get everybody else in and out. And then it's like 15, 20 of you that get to have this whole huge entire cafeteria that everybody else was feeding. And you just get to be in there by yourselves. And they actually make a little side dish for all of us that stayed hot. And to be absolutely honest, sometimes some of the things that were donated just would not feed the amount of people that were there. So sometimes, like, ours had a little extra sausage, or we got a fish that nobody else had, because one of the guys from the fish market was like, hey, I got 10 fish I got to get rid of. They're yours. It's not going to feed 250 people, but 20 people, it's going to make a nice little extra piece of for a meal. So that was one of the other joys. You work, you get a little better of a treatment. And you also got to take food with you. And since I was at the Polytech Gymnasium, I took chips and bread and honey and peanut butter. And I would also go back down to that lady's stash at night, sometimes get some apples or some pears. I wouldn't take beyond what we really needed, but I knew I wasn't going to starve, and I had a dry place to stay. And this worked for about 2.5 weeks. And then this kid that Moonchild knew, he gave the location to. And I was like, okay, but dude, you have to be here by this time, and this is how you get in, and you have to be quiet because of all the houses around it. Okay, bro, dude, no problem, okay. Dumbass. He shows up at about 2:15 in the morning. Hey! How do I get in? Hey! Moonchild! Leviathan! I had a weird name back then. That street name given wasn't one I chose, but yes, there was a while I was known as Leviathan on the streets. Don't ask me how the hell it happened. I don't even remember. I honestly don't. But when you live on the streets, you get a street name because you don't want to give your real name. But yeah, so he's hollering that out, middle of the night. I go down there, I let him, I'm like, shut up. Get him in. Next morning, getting ready to go. push the chain out through the hole so we can open the door. And I literally opened the door to a cop and a fireman with bolt cutters in his hands. The cop looks at me like, "That's smart. We literally thought this thing was still locked up. We're going to have to bolt it open." I'm like, "Yeah, no, you just got to change." He's like, "Dude, you don't tell too many people that. You got me?" And up to this point, I had kind of figured out a few things already. And I'm not trying to generalize. I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm not trying to be an ass. But I was already starting to realize that the homeless broke down into a few categories. You had people that are travelers, which would eventually be what I would come to be considered. You had your runaway kids that, mommy and daddy just asked them to do the dishes for you too many times. I mean, when you really start to sit down and listen to some of the kids that had run away and were living on the mean streets of San Francisco, you start to really hear the reasons they had run away. I'm sorry. A lot of them were just paltry little issues. Like literally parents were expecting me to do the dishes every night. That's called chores. Chores. So I didn't get along with some of the kids. I was like, "You just spoiled little idiots, thinking this is somehow going to freak out mommy and daddy and make them stop expecting things of you." That's gotten us pretty far in this country, hasn't it? You also have a lot of crime out there. Dealers, thieves, hustlers, pimps, whores, killers, racists, rapists. They're all out there too. So when the squat, that's what it's called when you break into a building and take it over for a while, in case you haven't heard that name before, it's called the squat, because you're squatting. We took that from the UK, where people can actually have squatters' rights. But that's where you truly take over a building, you reestablish it, you bring it back up to code, you make it a good place to live. And then you can establish squatters' rights. That doesn't happen in America. You just kind of lived in a place till you got kicked out. So that night, or that day, basically, trying to kind of figure out somewhere to stay, and Moonchild is absolutely wanting to stay in the Golden Gate area, the park, Golden Gate Park area. That was his jam, the whole Haight Street and all of that. And I was okay with it. It's hippies, free weed, acid if you wanted it. Easy to find food. I mean, I could understand why he was wanting to stay there, but I was wanting to get out. But before we leave Moonchild, I wasn't wanting to get out. I was wanting to just make sure I had a place to stay that night. So, before we leave Moonchild, back to those times that he would say me or I or myself, and felt that he had to burn himself with a cigar, and had been kind of goaded into it by some of his friends. I told him that I'd actually knock him silly if he ever did it around me, because it's stupid. He's like, you don't want me to hurt myself? No, man. Not when you're hanging around me. No, I don't. Which is also one of the other reasons why I think maybe he wanted me to hang around a little more, because I'm not going to say I was a good influence. I was a homeless crazy man, figuring life out at the age of 20, happy to take a drink or smoke a pipe any second anyone came by me, so it wasn't like I was the epitome of great decisions at the moment. But hurting yourself just to make other people laugh or make other people feel bigger than you, nah, I wasn't into that kind of shit. Messed up again, dang it. It's not bad, but I messed up again, which means we have to refold it again. But yeah, it's great, because we've got a lot of stuff to talk about anyway. I'm actually going to pause this here for a moment, because I need a little moment away from this. I mean, God Lord, I've been talking for 40 minutes, and plus there's an added on this, so it's probably close to 50 minutes. I told you it's going to be a long story. Because we're not even halfway through. So I'll be back.